Hello YouTube. Today I'm going to review the boring but big training program by Jim Wendler. And this is actually an addition that should be added to 531. The 531 method I will eventually review. It's already been done 15 times, so I'm not super motivated. But when it comes to something that is called boring but big, I can't help but be curious and want to discuss it with you guys. So what you do is basically you add that to a 531 template, and that is supposedly used as an accessory, or rather an assistant, because it's what it's called. It's an assistant template, which is a smart idea, by the way. It's something that can be complex, but that needs to be put in place at certain portions in the program because it can really make a difference. And sometimes you can actually have days that rotate where on one day there is an assistance template that is going to be added, and on the other one there won't. Or you can have 2 days that are similar, but they are going to have different assistant templates, and therefore they are going to have a different exercise selection, rep variety, etc., etc. So in reality, you end up with 2 different days. That's smart. But let's see if what is done here is actually going to be conducive to that. So the way that works is, on day 1, you're going to do your press. So you're going to do the 5-3-1 on the press. And after that, you're going to do a back off set of 5 sets of 10 reps. Now, I say back off sets because it is going to be a set that is going to replicate the same exact movement. That being said, as explained later in the program, when it comes to the variations, it is explained that that press could potentially be a variation. And there are 2 pathways to that. There is example 1 and example 2 for the boring but big. So as far as this goes, the example 1 of day 1 will have you do a press. And since you do a 5-3-1, I would already point out the fact that depending on the point you are at when it comes to the 5-3-1, the reps and sets of the movement that follows should be variable, meaning that they should evolve. That's also why I preach evolving rep ranges. If you do a strength folk portion of the training that has you do 1 heavy set, most of the time the back off sets that follow need to be higher in volume and in set multiplication. But here it's static, so that's already an issue. Because regardless of where you're at for your strength folk, the back off set is 5 sets of 10. And 5 sets of 10 is simply not a good rep range. There's a video dropping this week on 10 by 10 and German volume training where I am going to explain in details why the people who watch the Hypertrophy series already know why it makes no sense. Meaning that what you're doing here is, yes, you're accumulating tonnage, but you're accumulating tonnage in a range that is going to mean that a lot of the reps are going to be sub-maximal intensity windows. And that's okay, quote unquote, but it should be made more effective. It can be optimized. And the way to optimize that is actually to either have an evolving set scheme in place, or you can have an evolving rep scheme in place. But the issue here is that you're going to get an amount of reps that is going to be 50 always. And the way you get to your 50 is by repeating the same set for the same reps 5 times. So you're going to have a good amount of sandbagging in there. You're not going to go to failure on the first few sets, because if you went to real failure on the first few sets, you wouldn't be able to replicate the effort for the 4th or 5th set. So that's an issue. And that is, to me, a countermeasure put in place because a lot of people complained that 5-3-1 doesn't have enough volume, and therefore the pendulum swung back, and it swung back way too much. So on one hand, there's too much intensity but not enough volume, and on the other hand, now the assistance is not enough intensity and too much volume, and that's an issue. So that's the logic behind that second press. I would also say that if you end up doing the 4-5-3-1 and then you do a back off set with a similar style, that can lead to overuse injury. And for the most part, when you program back off sets, you tend to want to give the style, because in truth, these are not sets that you can actually rotate, meaning that if you have a predetermined back off set for the bench that is bench, it's your standardized conventional method of bench, you can't switch it with a close grip bench. The rep range completely changes, the weight selection changes, of course, but it's just not the same thing. Rep schemes need to be associated with lifts. It's very important. And then lat work, 5 sets of 10 reps. So the lat work, I suppose, is going to involve something that is going to be, purely focused on that. I can already envision someone doing that on a machine, and again, it's just not that effective. I understand training the lats a bit more on the bench, but it could be, done with a barbell row because your posterior chain is fresh. So I hope that this is a chance, because I don't see the variations for the lats. So I hope that the rows are in there. But again, 5 sets of 10 is just not something that is conducive to progression. If you're going to train a body part on one day, why not apply something that actually is going to be high intensity and get you to failure every single set? If you start having a hierarchy of days where only one body part gets to failure, you understand that the chance of you going to failure with that body part repeated throughout the week is reduced, because you're picking favorites. That's what I would call that. It's picking favorites. It's having a day where you have that one lift that gets all of the attention and the others get none. To an extent, it's smart, because that's what strength work is. But again, strength work doesn't represent the majority of the tonnage. It represents where the majority of the quality of the tonnage comes from. The other lifts also need to progress. So that's already a lot to say about day one. Day two is the same thing, but much worse. Why? Because you do 5-3-1 on the deads, and then you do 10 reps for 5 sets on the dead. In terms of stimulus, fatigue to stimulus ratio, or fatigue to stimulus ratio, whatever you want to call it, this is abysmal. It's way too high volume for the deadlifts. 50 reps. If you do that with any relevant intensity, you're going to be buried. There's no point in doing that. It's way too much. Do 3 sets of 3 reps as a backup set for deadlifts. It's plenty. And most of the time, if you're going to be able to do 50 reps of deadlifts and you're fine, you used a weight that is inconsequential. It was completely useless in the first place. And then abs, 5 sets. Abs really should be worked every day. If you want a strong core and if you want well-defined abs, train them every day. You can do them to finish the session, to completely destroy them. But I see 5 sets here, so something tells me that you're supposed to rest in between the sets. Don't rest in between sets of abs. Do something else. Work your real delts. Work your forearms. Work your calves. You don't need a breather in between sets of abs. Day 3, bench press. Sorry. So day 1 was press. I forgot that powerlifters use the term press for the overhead press. My bad. Same logic applies to an extent. It's less important in a sense for the press, because the risk of injury on the shoulders is lesser, so that's less terrible. I would say, however, that lat work, if you're going to do a day that is going to be focused on the vertical press, I want to see a vertical pull. So I hope that it involves pull-ups. But doing 3 sets of weighted pull-ups for 4 to 6 or 7 reps would be much more beneficial for the growth and hypertrophy of the lats than 5 sets of 10 for whatever movement. So day 3 is actually the bench press. And the issue with bench press and doing 5 sets of 10 reps on the bench press is that if you didn't have shoulders issue before, you will now, because you're repeating, if you do your standardized style, you're repeating a backup set for way too much volume afterwards. It makes no sense. So in that case, if I were to modify that day to make sense, I would say bench press, then close grip bench, 3 sets of 6 to 10. You would make better gains. And then again, the lat work. If you do bench, you can do an horizontal row afterwards. It makes a lot of sense in terms of synergy. And right now, understand that I'm playing nice, because I'm playing by the rules of the program. I have a lot to say about the way the program works, the synergy of the muscles, and the way the split affects body group distribution and training. Day 4, squats. So you do a 5-3-1, then you do 5 sets of 10 reps. Way too high again. And I read the comments, I read the guidelines. I don't know if Jim is actually the guy who did that. I have nothing but respect for him, but in the comments, in the guidelines, he says, pick a low weight when you start because you're going to get buried. Yeah, and you're always going to have to pick a low weight because you're never going to get to a point where 5 sets of 10 reps is optimal. Any weight that you utilize in relevant intensity windows is going to be too much. Why? I'm not saying don't do 10 reps for the squats. I'm not saying don't do high reps. I am saying that if you look at what happens when you do strength work, okay, you warm up fat 50, 60, 70, 80%, blah, blah, blah. You do your strength work with 531. You're here. You're at peak stimulus, mental stamina, etc. You're going to temper down from here. Some people temper down fast, some people temper down slow. It depends on muscular resistance and endurance. You do your first set of 10. You're here. And then another one, you're here. And then here, here, here. You understand that the amount of fatigue you're experiencing should result in what I just described. It's a downward curve, but that downward curve would also entail that you're not able to use the weight anymore. So that set should become a pyramid set. It should become a downward pyramid set, but it's not because you keep the same weight. So what is happening? You're not doing this, you're doing this, meaning that you were at the peak at the strength work and now you're slowly going down. And why are you slowly going down? Because the muscles are not being, actually, fatigued. Why? Because you're sandbagging. The program forces you to sandbag to be able to do 5 sets of 10. And that's an issue. Does it mean that the 50 reps you do have absolutely no effect? No, I'm not saying that. I am saying that in terms of progression, in terms of manipulation of volume, that is kamikaze. It's a tactic that lacks grace. It lacks any refinement in a sense. It's way too much all or nothing. And again, if you don't have knee problems before, you will with this. Same logic for the squats and deadlifts also. 5 sets of 10, a lot of people are going to be limited by their cardiovascular endurance. It's not even going to be muscular failure, it's going to be cardiovascular endurance. So that was for example 1. And example 2 has what I consider to be better, meaning that you would do on day 1 overhead press and then bench press as a backup set, so it becomes a variation, it becomes a rotation, it becomes something that makes a ton more sense in my opinion, because that way you can push progression on the press, then you do your bench press. 5 sets of 10 is still terrible, by the way. Day 2, deadlift and then squats. I have an issue with that because if you train the 2 in the same day, the second one is going to suffer. That being said, you could consider that the squat is just a secondary movement, so that's fine, but you're still doing 5 sets of 10. Day 3, bench press, press. That's actually my favorite way to program a bench press day. You start with a horizontal press and then you follow that up with a vertical press. It's great for the health of the shoulders. And then day 4, squat and deadlift, which is what I call the death combo, really, because squats are super fatiguing. There's a lot of actual loading, and they transform the deadlift into a lift that can actually hurt you, because your thoracic spine is going to be so tired that you're going to round. Most people already round when they are not tired, and that's when injury occurs. It's the only moment where injury occurs in the deadlift for the lower back is when the structural integrity of the spine gives. And then it says that he gets asked all the time which one is better. There is no better, just different. I would say that example number 2 of boring but big is much better for a lot of reasons that I just explained. So that's that. That's playing it nice because I'm following the logic and mentality of the program. Now, if I think outside of the program and I apply my own thinking, look at the days. So it's called boring but big, by the way. I want to say that. Why? Because a lot of people do 531 for size, and the name is boring but big. So unless it's an appropriation of the term big to mean strength, when I think big, I think hypertrophy. And since people on the channel wanted to know for hypertrophy's sake what the program and the assistant template are good for, I'm going to tell you. The issue with the days are they're way too minimalistic, meaning that you do 1 to 2 exercises, you do 2 to 3 exercises per day. That's very low exercise selection. You are focusing on accumulating sets and reps on these exercises, which can lead to overuse injury. And if you look at the exercises, a lot of muscles are completely ignored. On the days where you do press, for example, you're working shoulders, you're working triceps, okay? So it's a shoulders and triceps day. In the realm of bodybuilding, that's called a bro split. It's not a good type of split. On the deadlift day, while you're doing deadlifts, that's all you're doing. Then you do a pull from the floor, which is a hip hinge, so it's another deadlift. Again, it's segmenting a lower body day when you really should try to get and hit every single body part. This is why I said that the example 2 is better. Doing a knee flexion and a hip hinge on a day makes more sense in terms of frequency and bodybuilding than doing 2 hip hinges, unless you really don't want to grow your quads. But this is a story that's just age old, because there are a lot of body parts that are completely ignored. In this template, I see no long head of the tricep work. I see no direct rear delt or forearm work. I see no direct trap work. I see no direct calves work. I see no direct neck work. I see very little abs because the abs are not supersetted. I see no supersets, again, because it's minimalistic. That's the powerlifting program. I'm not going to say if it's good or bad, because it's not my expertise, but it's a powerlifting program. It really is. If you're going to train for size, this is not the way. You're ignoring way too many body parts. Some body parts get hit way too hard. The frequency is just not on point. I mean, even in terms of powerlifting, you might be getting only 1 horizontal press a week. This is why also template number 2 is better, because you actually get 2 horizontal presses a week. That's low. Even someone like me who doesn't want to hypertrophy his chest too much, I still do 2 horizontal presses a week. So that's low frequency, which is a no-no for natural bodybuilding. There's no bicep work. I didn't say that, but there is no bicep work. So this is going to make you look like a powerlifter. If that's what your aesthetic dictates, then by all means do it. But you're not going to be following the conventional canons of what aestheticism is. And that can be a problem for you if you want to look good. So I'm going to leave you with that. Actually, I think I went and covered what I wanted to cover with that program. If you have any questions, let me know. I don't know if I'm going to review 531 because it's already been done 15 times. If you have specific questions about 531, just ask them in the Hypertrophy Q&A and I will answer. Thank you for watching. Have a good day.